Now, while there may be some consensus over global warming in the scientific community, in the halls of Congress, the debate itself is getting pretty heated. Oklahoma Senator Jim Inhofe is an outspoken opponent of the Kyoto Agreement that would limit the amount of greenhouse gases the U.S. could emit. In fact, last fall, as the Senate debated a bill that would have created regulations to combat global warming, Senator Inhofe led the opposition and went so far as to call global warming a hoax. I sat down with him earlier this week to find out why he feels so strongly about the global warming debate and its threat to our economy. Senator, we hear a lot about global warming these days, but you like to use the word climate change. Why is that?
Well, first of all, the liberals like to use climate change just in case they're wrong and it ends up getting cooler. Climate change and global warming are actually synonymous. The whole idea is that the alarmists, and I call them the alarmists, the same ones who said back in 1975 that an ice age was coming, we're all going to die, they contend that the weather is getting warmer and has since the turn of the century, and that's due to anthropogenic gases or man-made gases, CO2, methane, and that type of thing. And that's, so it really you could use the terms synonymously.
Now, much of the world is critical of the U.S. for not doing more. What would you say to those critics that criticize the U.S.?
Well, I say, first of all, that this has been an orchestrated event started by the United Nations back in the late 90s to make people using scare tactics, think that global warming is coming and all kinds of bad things are going to happen to us. So when I became chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee 3.5 years ago, I thought, let me find out if it's going to cost this much money to sign the Kyoto Treaty, as the Horton School of Economics, the Horton Econometric Survey stated. Then let's make sure the science is right, only to find out that almost all science since 1999 has refuted what one man, Michael Mann, said about the hockey stick. Remember the famous hockey stick, where he plotted out the temperatures from about the 3rd century to the 20th century, and then all of a sudden they started getting warmer. What he forgot to do, he neglected to do, intentionally I think, was put in the medieval warming period, when temperatures were warmer than they are today. That was around 800 to 1200 AD. Then we went into the little ice age that came out of that around the turn of the century. Now, if they really believe that there is a relationship between CO2 and climate change, then how can they explain the fact that the largest emission of CO2 in recorded history occurred in the middle and late 40s, and that precipitated a cooling period so severe that the same magazines like Time magazine, who now is trying to scare people into thinking that all the ice is melting and all that, they were writing articles, another ice age is coming, we're all going to die. So the thing has been well orchestrated, and when I became chairman of this committee, I thought, why are politicians so afraid of the environmental extremists? And the answer, I guess, a lot of it is they're the ones who pump the money into the campaigns.
Let's talk economics then. If the U.S. did adhere to the Kyoto Standard, do you think that would make our country vulnerable to other economies that maybe weren't adhering?
Well, first of all, we know that China is not going to do it. We know that India is not going to do it. And so if we did it, according to the econometric survey that Horton put on, that would cost the average family of 4 $2,750 a year. It would increase the cost of our energy. It would be almost an economic destruction of our nation. Would the other countries that are competing with us do it? No, they wouldn't do it. China's not going to do it. They've never indicated that they would do it. India's not doing it. So it would put us in a less competitive position with other countries. Now let's keep in mind also, of the some 17 nations in Western Europe, only 2 have met their Kyoto standards. So, you know, they're not doing it anyway.
Despite what we hear on both sides of the debate, would it not be prudent to control the level of CO2 in some way in the United States?
Well, if they can show scientifically that there is a problem with it, then I'd say there is, to go ahead and do it. But science is now showing that there's not a relationship between man-made gases or CO2 and climate change. For that reason, the only justification for using it is if they can make things more economical. And just the reverse is true. So I would probably say no. Let's keep in mind, these countries who signed on to the Kyoto Treaty early on, like Canada, they're now re-examining their positions, and the 60 scientists in Canada are now petitioning Prime Minister Harper to re-look perhaps getting out, since the science is showing that the relationship between CO2 and climate change doesn't seem to exist.